In the winter, burned silence of the 16th of February 1943, far beneath the weathered stones of Tunis, a cold breath of dread traveled through an underground limestone chamber where Oberingenieur Klaus Hermann stood frozen beside a battered metal case. Retrieved from the smoking corpse of an American Sherman tank, he did not blink, did not cough, did not shift a single muscle for fear that the slightest movement might crack the fragile stillness pressing down on him, and the 5 engineers gathered at his shoulders. Their faces hovered pale in the dim lantern light. Eyes narrowed, breaths trembling in small white clouds that rose and vanished in the stagnant air. The room felt wrong that night. Too quiet, too cold, too expectant, as though it understood before any of them did that what lay sealed inside. That case would fracture something far larger than German pride. For 3 years, Berlin had fed them a steady diet of reassurance. American radio equipment was crude, mass-produced, primitive, designed by a nation of factory workers and housewives who spat out iron and aluminum the way children kick toys across floors. German engineers, Berlin insisted, were the envy of the world. Artists of circuitry, masters of precision, custodians of a technical lineage unreachable by the clumsy hands of American assembly lines. And yet something on the battlefields had begun to smell wrong. Klaus had sensed it for months. The eerie coordination of American units, the impossible timing of artillery barrages, the uncanny accuracy of American pilots, striking hidden positions as though guided by whispers of omniscience. Allied soldiers communicated across mountains and deserts without delay, without confusion, without the static-laced chaos that plagued German transmissions in the field. American voices on the airwaves cut through interference like knives through parchment. How Klaus's gloved fingertips brushed the shrapnel, dented ridges of the aluminum case. Desert sand still clung to its seams, a faint reminder of the violence that had freed it from American hands. He inserted the screwdriver into the first screw. His hand trembled, not from fear, he reminded himself, but from anticipation so sharp it bordered on dread. One screw came free with a soft metallic sigh, then another, then the last. When Klaus lifted the lid, the faint whiff of burnt circuitry escaped like a ghost fleeing its coffin. Inside lay the CR-508 compact rugged, designed with an efficiency so foreign to German engineering that for a moment none of them spoke. They simply stared. The silence grew heavier. Klaus reached inside, lifted the first module, and the breath caught in his throat. It was not the beauty of the design that stunned him. It was the brutality of its simplicity. Each part was molded, stamped, punched, assembled with the blunt confidence of a nation that did not fear scarcity. It had been made, no, engineered, to be built by ordinary hands at extraordinary speed. German radios were masterpieces, meticulous, delicate, each one a quiet sculpture of solder and wire, requiring hours of skilled labor. This thing, this American artifact, was not a masterpiece. It was a weapon of infrastructure, a weapon of abundance, a weapon built by a civilization that could outproduce the Reich by orders of magnitude. He swallowed hard, his pulse thudding in his ears. He removed the crystal unit, precision, ground quartz, hundreds of them. If American inventories were accurate, each locked to a specific frequency, each reliable beyond anything Germany could produce in meaningful quantities. Impossible, whispered Voigt, the youngest engineer, his voice cracking. They cannot manufacture crystal at this scale. They cannot. But they could. And they had. And they were. Klaus disassembled the radio deeper and deeper. FM modulation, automatic frequency control, noise rejection, modular replacement systems. He felt sweat dampen the back of his neck, despite the cold. FM transmission alone was a revelation. German AM sets screeched with static and atmospheric interference whenever the weather shifted, whenever engines roared, whenever lightning flickered beyond the horizon. But American FM clean, stable, resilient in the chaos of war. That clarity was worth more than any tank armor. Hours passed in suffocating silence as the engineers documented every circuit, every resistor, every coil, every line of solder. By dawn the next day, Klaus had reached a conclusion he had hoped never to think, let alone say aloud. "We cannot match this," he whispered. "Not with our factories, not with our methods, not with our resources." The others said nothing, because they knew, and because they feared what it meant. His report reached Berlin days later. He expected outrage, panic, a whirlwind of orders. Instead, the Reich responded with nothing but silence. The kind of silence that hides fear behind arrogance. The kind of silence that hopes the truth will die in the shadows. But the truth did not die. More captured radios arrived, each one a coffin nail hammered into the fantasy of German technological supremacy. Then came the SER-300 backpack unit. Klaus held it in both hands, stunned. 32 pounds, FM clarity, 5-mile range in rough terrain, operable by a single-foot soldier while running. No German equivalent existed, not in prototype, not in concept, not in dreams. "This is not a radio," murmured Weber, one of the senior engineers. "This is a nerve, and each American soldier is connected to the same nervous system." Even the thought made Klaus's stomach twist. Because he understood the implication, America did not fight with isolated units. They fought as a single, synchronized organism. When an American officer barked a command into his handset, it traveled instantly across platoons, companies, battalions. When German officers shouted orders, messengers ran into gunfire. When American artillery received coordinates, they fired within minutes. When German artillery received coordinates, hours dripped by, like blood from a wound. In Italy, 1943. American units seemed to react before German attacks even began. Their response time defied logic, as if they saw the battlefield from above, where every movement, every shift, every weakness appeared in real time. Klaus knew why. The radios, the networks, the invisible web binding them together. Germany still imagined war as an orchestra, organized by a single conductor. America treated war as a living swarm, every soldier a voice. When the Allies stormed Normandy, nearly 50,000 CR-300 sets were in the field. German engineers who examined captured units found them coated in salt, mud, smoke, still operational as though immune to war itself. Motorola retrofitted improvements in real time. American factories simply swallowed updates like ocean waves, swallow tides. Germany could not keep pace. Germany could not even begin. Then came Bastogne. December 1944. Snow, blood, silence thick enough to choke on. A German platoon ambushed an American unit behind a stone wall. They should have been isolated, visible to German eyes but blind to Allied positions. And yet, within 90 seconds, artillery rained from the sky with the precision of divine fury. Klaus read the field reports in disbelief. One man, one radio, 12 seconds of speaking, and death followed. By early 1945, Klaus no longer studied American radios. He feared them. The more he learned, the more his stomach twisted into knots. He began to dream of networks, pulsing webs of electricity, binding entire armies into a single hive, mind that reacted faster than command structures could comprehend. For the first time in his life, he felt truly small, truly obsolete, truly outmatched, not by genius, but by a civilization that had turned factories into weapons. A civilization that believed every soldier mattered enough to be given the power of communication. Germany did not understand this concept. Germany believed in hierarchy, in silence and obedience. America believed in connection, in information, in abundance. And abundance, Klaus realized, was more deadly than any rifle. When the Rhine was crossed, American networks drove the assault, like veins pumping blood through a colossal war machine. German commanders screamed into dead air, while American companies whispered into radios and shifted like water cutting through stone. The German army fought as fragments. The American army fought as one. And in war, unity is deadlier than bravery. When the Ruhr pocket collapsed, 325,000 German soldiers trapped like insects in a jar. Klaus read Model's final message before communications failed altogether. No contact with adjacent units, No contact with headquarters. Fighting continues. Coordination impossible. Klaus folded the paper with shaking hands. Impossible. That word again, always that same word. But now he understood it wasn't the Americans who were impossible. It was the German belief that they could win without hearing their own soldiers. After the war, Klaus lived long enough to see how history transformed communication from a tool into a weapon. He told interviewers that the SCR-300 was not a radio at all, but a prophecy. A hint of wars to come. Wars fought by networks, not armies. Wars where information speed was firepower. Wars where silence meant death. He confessed that what terrified him most was not American technology, but American philosophy. A philosophy that believed, even in the horror of global conflict, that every soldier deserved a voice. A philosophy that Germany had never understood. A philosophy that Germany had never even tried to understand. And as Klaus grew older, the thing that haunted him was not the memory of circuits or frequencies, but the final realization he'd tried so hard to ignore in that cold limestone chamber in 1943. The Americans had not just built radios, they had built equality into hardware. They had built democracy into steel. They had built connection into survival. And connection, multiplied across millions of soldiers, was unstoppable. Klaus never forgot the moment he first opened the metal case in Tunis. He would later tell one interviewer decades after the war had ended that he had felt something in the air the instant the lid came free, a shift, a warning, a whisper of inevitability. He didn't know what it meant then, but he knew what it meant now. The walkie-talkie had not won the war. It had simply made victory inevitable, and as he looked back on the empire he had served, rigid, silent, fractured, he felt a shiver crawl down his spine at the truth. He had spent a lifetime fearing when one side fights with fragments and the other fights with a network. The outcome is decided long before the first shot is fired, and if that terrified him in 1943, it terrified him even more. Now, because the world was changing again, and Klaus knew better than anyone that whoever controls the next network will control the next war. But the question that chilled him deepest was the one he never dared to answer. What if the next war has already begun?